Okay, the final chapter, measuring labor activity. In other words, measuring how effective your people are. Some managers choose to express labor activity either in labor dollars or labor hours, or sometimes in a combined approach. I like doing it more for labor hours. Now, when I do my budget, I do it in labor dollars. But when you're dealing with entry-level managers, sometimes we have what's called a labor guide. So, how many hours to serve the amount of people that you have. It's tough to do it in labor dollars because sometimes you have fixed labor, like your managers. You may have experienced employees that might be making $4 or $5 more per hour than someone else, yet they might be doing the same job on different days. So I think it's, in my personal professional opinion, I would focus more on the labor hours approach. But with that being said, we'll talk about some of the advantages measuring labor standards and hours. Basically, labor hours must be calculated for staff members who are paid wages, even if labor cost measurements are used. Um, in other words, um, your waitresses, they may be only paid, $2.75 an hour, but they're getting tips as well. So it doesn't matter what type of measurements are being used. Basically, almost all your staff are getting paid wages. That's just a fancy way of saying your hourly labor. So your busboys, your waiters, your waitresses, your dishwashers, your cooks, your bartenders, your hostesses, the whole shebang. And it says calculating labor hours rather than dollars keeps a measure from being affected during times of economic inflation. Now, why do I have that highlighted? Simple as this. If you do it in labor hours, say for instance, the inflation goes up and all of a sudden you're not making as much money per meal, and you have to pay your employees a little bit more. You're still going to have one waitress for four tops, no matter what, or maybe one cook for every 100 meals you serve. The amount of money you pay them is going to vary. You have very little control over that because of inflation or deflation, you may be paying them more or less and making a profit higher or lower, based upon what you're paying for your food. But you still have that consistency in labor hours. So as I said, let me just reiterate that. If you have four tops, 16 people total, and you feel that your server can only handle that amount of people, that's how you're going to schedule accordingly. And if you feel that one bartender can handle, one night, you may pay that bartender $7 an hour or $14 an hour. You're still going to have that one bartender. You're going to schedule that person for 8 hours. Okay, on Monday night, I'm allocating 8 hours to that bartender. But if you use the labor dollar functionality, well, gee, I need to allocate $90 that night. No, I'm sorry, this other person's on. I have to allocate $120 per night. And that just gets a little bit too confusing. Now, what is the purpose of a staffing guide? I'm going to highlight the word guide. And the reason being is this. A lot of upper level managers, general managers, owners, they think a guide is the Bible, where if you go over the guide or under the guide, you're doing something incorrect. There are so many reasons why that you might have to schedule more people, or you send people home early, or it gets busier than you expected. A whole bunch of reasons why your labor might be a little bit off per shift or per week or whatnot. What the guide does, it indicates the number of labor hours needed for each position and each shift to basically get things done. And I inferred that in the last slide. So let's say you're working on a Saturday at a diner. So you should have for that, for the morning shift that's busy, if you serve maybe, you have 120 covers, okay, you need to have 8 servers on. You need to have 2 busboys on. You need to have 2 dishwashers on, 3 cooks on, so we'll say 2 hosts or hostesses on. So therefore, that's a total number of labor hours of X amount of labor hours. And in order to make sure you maintain quality and quantity and to make sure that your customers are taken care of properly. I hear the term short-staffed. Oh no, a waitress called off. Now you have 7 people to serve. So one of those stations might be overwhelmed, or maybe a busboy is to help out because there's a weak waitress on in the back or something. If a cook calls off, what happens? The manager jumps back and starts cooking. It serves as a tool. Once again, not a Bible. It's a tool when you properly plan and schedule. You can't just go by the seat of your pants. So almost every Monday I'm going to have 6 waitresses on a Monday night because that's what we normally do. Because we normally have this amount of people to come in, this amount of guests to come in, so we need this amount of people to serve our people. And once again, if you find out you're getting slammed or all of a sudden you're short-staffed like consistently on a Tuesday night because all of a sudden the bridge club comes in after 6 p.m., you got to make adjustments. Say, hey, you know something? I think we need that extra waitress on starting at 6 p.m. And the flip side can be true as well. If you have a bunch of employees just standing around, then all of a sudden you're overstaffed. So instead of wasting their time, having to come in for an hour or two, then sending them home, say, look, We're just going with 4 people tonight, and we'll keep it at that based upon our business. Now, 2 types of labor. We have variable and fixed labor. Let's focus on fixed labor, and I talked about this briefly before earlier in the term. Fixed labor is the minimum amount of labor needed to operate facility regardless of business volume, and basically includes managers and basically anybody that's salaried. I know what it says here on the slide: assistant managers, supervisors, yada yada yada. But the bottom line is this: if you have a manager making $50,000 a year, it doesn't matter whether you're doing $1 million in sales or $10 in sales. That manager will be paid $50,000 per year. That's called fixed labor. It doesn't change depending on how busy your operation is. Now we talk about variable labor. Think about the word variable. It varies. So it adapts based upon business volume. So usually the busier you are, the more hourly labor you have to take care of that. Just like my example I gave 2 slides ago on a Saturday morning or a Monday night or a Tuesday night. The busier you are, obviously the more labor you need, and obviously that varies based upon your business volume. So if you're very busy, more people. Not so busy, don't schedule as many people. And that goes with servers, bus people, kitchen staff, back of the house, front of the house. Those are all your hourly employees, not your salaried. Now, the schedule. Very important tool. You always have people calling in, when am I scheduled next week? Or a lot of times use automated schedule systems. That's how you monitor and control labor hours. It gives you information about actual hours worked, compared to the hours scheduled. Let's say you scheduled a total of 90 labor hours on a Wednesday night. And you look in the report and you find out that, your employees worked a total of 115 labor hours. When I got to figure out, okay, why is there a variance? Why do we work, 15 or 25 more hours than we should have? You look at the sales. Oh my gosh, we're 25% over on sales. I guess we need those extra hours. Sometimes even myself as a bartender. Sometimes I get out at 11 o'clock. Sometimes I get out at 1 o'clock. As I'm doing this video right now, I stayed an extra hour and a half last night because there was a group in from New Jersey. It was, they got in late from dinner. They had a meeting going on. I extended the last call for them. They were happy about it, and we made some extra sales. So therefore, even though I was expected to leave at 11:30 or midnight, I stayed an extra hour because of that. And then sometimes once you look at all this, you take corrective action. It's like, okay, we seem to be having people stay way too long. And sometimes you have people that we say they milk the clock. They just stand there. They talk for half an hour, then they decide to punch out. That's one of the most irritating things I used to encompass as a manager. It's like, all right, punch out, get out, leave now, punch out. Don't get overtime. Now you have your infamous weekly labor hour and cost reports. This enables managers to examine labor costs on a per employee basis. As I said before, sometimes employees milk the clock. Why is the breakfast person, the regular person leaving all the time at 2 p.m. on time, but the other person who does breakfast all of a sudden is leaving at 3:30 p.m. and they have the same exact job description? Why is there an hour and a half variance with that? You want to monitor overtime. Now with waiters and waitresses, not a big deal. You pay somebody $2.75 an hour and pay them time and a half, that's nothing. Although some managers go ballistic over that, which I think is ridiculous. But if you get a cook or somebody gets paid a lot, like maybe 12, 13, 14 bucks an hour, they're getting overtime. If it consistently happens, there's a scheduling problem. If it happens once in a while, it's understandable. Sometimes you can't judge every time you're going to be busy, but you need to look at that. We want to identify instances in which an employee's actual labor hours exceeds the number of hours for which that employee was scheduled. Once again, need for tighter controls. Just like I said before, you have employees that love to milk the clock. I know employees that basically sometimes they come in an hour early just because they want to, and they'll punch in and just hang out in the break room. It's like, all right, get your butt to work, or why are you here so early? I remember punching people, not literally punching people out, but actually, manually and overriding their time card saying, look, you're not on the clock yet. You're supposed to start at 4 o'clock and you punch in at 3:07. No, I don't care what you do for the next 53 minutes, but you're not going to be productive, so please leave or stay in the break room. And then at 4 o'clock, then you punch in. And that kind of sets the tone.